Synopsis of the Books of the Bible. Romans. By JND Darby. New Testament. Romans. Chapters 12 and 13. The ground of all Christian morality laid on God's mercy and saving grace. The Apostle resumes the thread of his instructions, by taking up, as he does in all his epistles, the moral consequences of his doctrine. He places the believer at the outset on the ground of God's mercy, which he had fully developed already. The principle of grace that saves had been established as the basis of salvation. The ground of all Christian morality is now laid in this fundamental principle, to present our bodies as a sacrifice, living, holy, acceptable to God, an intelligent service, not that of the hands, not consisting in ceremonies which the body could perform. A simple but deep-reaching and all-efficacious principle. This was for man personally. As to his outward relationships, he was not to be conformed to the world. Neither was this to be an outside mechanical nonconformity, but the result of being renewed in mind, so as to seek for and discern the will of God, good and acceptable and perfect, the life being thus transformed. This connects itself with the end of Romans 6. It is not those sitting in heavenly places, imitators of God as dear children, but men on earth set free by the delivering power of redemption and grace, yielding themselves up to God to do His will. The exhortation follows the character we have seen to be that of the epistle. The Christian's walk and life characterized by devotedness, obedience, humility and dependence. Thus the Christian walk was characterized by devotedness and obedience. It was a life subjected to the will of another, namely, to the will of God, and therefore stamped with humility and dependence. But there was absolute devotedness of heart in self-sacrifice. For there was a danger, flowing from the power that acted in it, of the flesh coming in and availing itself of it. With regard to this, everyone was to have a spirit of wisdom and moderation, and to act within the limits of the gift which God had dispensed to him, occupying himself with it according to the will of God, even as each member has its own place in the body, and should accomplish the function which God has ascribed to it. The Apostle passes on insensibly to all the forms which duty assumes in the Christian, according to the various positions in which he stands, and to the spirit in which he ought to walk in every relationship. The Christian's relationship with the authorities under which he is placed. It is in Romans 12 only that the idea of the assembly as a body is thus found in this epistle, and that, in connection with the duties of the members individually, duties that flowed from their positions as such. Otherwise, it is the position of man in his individual responsibility before God, and this met by grace, and then the delivered man, that is set before us in the epistle to the Romans. The directions given by the Apostle extend to the Christian's relationship with the authorities under which he is placed. He recognizes them as accomplishing the service of God, and as armed with authority from him so that resisting them would be resisting that which God had established. Conscience, therefore, and not merely force, constrained the Christian to obey. In fine, he was to render to every man that which was due to him in virtue of his position, to leave nothing owing to anyone, be it of whatever character it might, excepting love, a debt which never can be liquidated. Christians among themselves as to those of high or low degree. Among themselves, Christians are exhorted not to seek the high things of this world, but to walk as brethren with those of low degree, a precept too much forgotten in the assembly of God, to her loss. If the Christian of high degree requires that honor according to the flesh should be paid him, let it be done with good will. Happy he who, according to the example of the King of Kings and to the precept of our Apostle, knows how to walk in company with those of low degree in their journey through the wilderness. Now love is the fulfilling of the law, for love works no ill to his neighbor, and so fulfills the law. Admonition to walk as children of the day, which is at hand. Another principle acts also on the spirit of the Christian. It is time to awake. The deliverance from this present evil age, which the Lord will accomplish for us, draws nigh. The night is far spent, the day is at hand, God knows the moment. The characteristics which marked its approach in the days of the Apostle have ripened in a very different way since then, although God, with a view to those whom he is gathering in, is still even now restraining them. Let us then walk as children of the day, casting off the works of darkness. We belong to the day, of which Christ himself will be the light. Let our walk be in accordance with that day, putting on Christ himself, and not being studious of that which is in accordance with the will and the lusts of the flesh,